Good evening. Welcome to our study tonight. Before we begin, let me give you just a couple of announcements. Remember, next week we will not be having study. We'll be taking off next week. We will follow up the week after. Also, I did a recording, it should be on YouTube, on Larry Ragland TV on Thursday night, this Thursday, tomorrow, at 7 o'clock about the end times. So if you want to join us with that, we would love to have you. All right, let's go right into the news tonight. Let's talk about the New World Order, and let's talk about this article that came out today, or this week. Leaders at the UN make a 7-year agreement to implement a simple global agenda. Last week, officials from all over the world gathered in New York City to commit their nations to fully implement the 2030 agenda over the next 7 years. If you're a Bible prophecy buff, then you ought to know about that 7 years. It's very important. These are essentially a blueprint for how the globalists want the world to be run. Just about every area of human activity is covered by the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and it would take extreme measures over the next 7 years in order to achieve all of them by the deadline. But that was what the 2023 SDG Summit was all about. Leaders from all over the planet got together and pledged to do whatever was necessary to meet those goals on time. They're calling it, quote, a new phase of accelerated progress. The globalists really do intend to implement the 2030 agenda and Sustainable Development Goals by the time the UN General Assembly convenes in September of 2030. That's just 7 years from now, and so the clock is ticking. During the 2023 SDG Summit, global leaders adopted a sweeping political declaration, a 10-page document. It came at a crucial juncture as global crises, including armed conflicts, adverse climate impacts, and the lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, threaten the achievement of their goals, so they say. The political declaration, again, is 10 pages long, and some of it is absolutely ridiculous. Like this, a 20 mile per hour speed limit is being slapped on every single resident road in Wales. How would you feel if every single road in your community had a 20 mile per hour speed limit? Unfortunately, extreme measures such as this will soon be implemented all over the world in the name of climate change. The globalists are absolutely determined to meet their climate goals, and the rest of us will suffer as a result. Well, a UN policy paper that was published some time ago explained that a future pandemic, quote, a major event in outer space or even unforeseen risks would all qualify as these triggers to get the UN to take over control of the world. For a global shock, giving the UN complete global authority. Ultimately, just about any sort of crisis at all could be used to justify activating this new emergency platform. So we talk about the Antichrist, maybe we need to talk about the UN. Who would be leading the entire world in a crisis? Well, nobody really knows the people and the dignitaries in the UN, but if something like that happens, everyone would. And once it's activated, officials at the UN would have the power to extend the emergency powers that they have been given indefinitely. This is an extremely frightening proposal. We definitely do not want the UN to have emergency powers over the entire globe that could be extended indefinitely. Sadly, the Biden administration is fully behind this plan. Of course it is. Biden is behind every wrong plan you could possibly imagine. And next September, the US will agree to adopt this pact for the future. With Biden in the White House, the globalists are able to greatly advance their agenda. But once he leaves, it's going to be a lot tougher, and they know that. I wish more Americans understood what is happening on a global scale. But unfortunately, the mainstream media never talks about any of this. We live in such perilous times, and those that wish to erode our freedoms are absolutely relentless. And it's happening right under the noses of every unsuspecting American. Let me give you a little bit more talking about prophecy. Obviously, you'll know who these are: Bill Gates and Elon Musk. He's not pictured there, but let me throw in Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon. Big Tech Beast System, technology tycoons influencing society worldwide. A great article. Technology is advancing obviously at a staggering pace, but it parallels other advances in other arenas that the coming Antichrist will leverage to fulfill his evil plans to enslave humanity during the tribulation. We must also remember that the Antichrist needs help to accomplish his goals. Even though he is empowered by the dragon himself, Revelation 13:2 tells us, the Antichrist manipulates a coalition of 10 kings, the Bible says, to implement his worldwide beast system. He will then subdue or remove 3 of them at a future time. Let me read you the parallel verses from Daniel and Revelation. In Daniel 7:24 it says this, "And the 10 horns of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse or different from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings." Sounds cryptic, but let's take it a little bit further. Revelation 17, a parallel verse, says this, verse 12, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast." That's pretty specific. "These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast." The Greek word for king here is basileus, and it offers a broader nuance than merely what we understand regarding the word king. It's one who possesses unusual or transcendent power. We will call them the 10 influencers because they do have unusual power or some valuable level of authority that the Antichrist will be seeking to leverage. Secondly, they are not required to be in governmental or ruling positions at the time of their arrangement with the Antichrist. Third, when the time comes, they'll give their significant influence or power to the beast, and in return, given the ability to rule with him for a short period of time in his final kingdom. They could be what we know as oligarchs or technocrats or the elite of the world who will one day give their authority, their technology, their wealth, their influence to the Antichrist in exchange for being allowed to rule in his beast system. We are witnessing in our day the super rich not often sticking to the one industry which made them wealthy, but instead spreading their wealth into sometimes completely disparate technologies or fields of research. These technocrats partner with governments, NGOs, and financial institutions. One organization with extensive official and unofficial agreements with technocrats is the WEF, the World Economic Forum. If you saw the who's who in that, you would see the super rich and the super technologically advanced. The WEF is dedicated to seeing, quote, a complete reset of the way life on planet Earth functions. They're brazenly presenting their vision and pursuing technology to accomplish their goals by the year 2030, again known as Agenda 2030 or the Great Reset. It's mind-boggling to think of the influence these technologies do have and will have on world society, and how they'll serve the purpose of the Antichrist. Amazon seeks to put up 3,236 satellites by the end of the decade. Called the Kuiper system or Project Kuiper, they have 2 launches planned for 2023 and service expected to arrive to customers in late 2024. OneWeb sought an initial 650 satellites. As of February 2023, they had 542 active satellites in low orbit around the Earth. Starlink, Elon Musk owns it. Over 4,500 satellites were working in orbit by May of 2023, with plans for over 42,000 within 5 years. Currently, over 1.5 million active subscribers in 50 plus countries, with global mobile phone service to be implemented in 2023. Iridium started in 1998 and now has 82 active satellites and a partnership with Qualcomm for Android users. Globestar Communications became functional in 1998 with 75 current satellites and functionality with the Apple iPhone 14. They could be used for surveillance, facial recognition, camera technology, data acquisition through social media and internet. So when we're talking about technocrats giving power to the Antichrist, think of all the technology they can give them. Not to mention AI. Most of the top 10 financial and technological oligarchs are involved in the research and the advancement of artificial intelligence, AI. AI needs 3 things to work effectively: big data, computing power, and algorithm engineers. Then you have biotechnology. Backed by its foundation, MIT researchers are developing a method of recording a patient's vaccination history through invisible dye injected under the skin from Bill Gates. Then there's genetically modified farming. Bill Gates has also spread his oligarchical influence further than any other person on the planet. Now listen to it, because it's mind-boggling. He has now become the largest private landowner of farmland in the United States. Presidential candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. observed, quote, "Gates has been expanding his power over global populations by buying devalued assets at fire sale prices and maneuvering for monopoly control over public health. Combined with his investments in global communications, digital currencies, high-tech surveillance, data harvesting systems, and artificial intelligence, Bill Gates is the quintessential technocrat. Many U.S. lawmakers and officials have actually co-conspire with these big tech oligarchs, encouraging them to police or censor content more aggressively. Then you have innovation zones. Nevada Governor Steve Sisolak recently proposed giving corporations who own significant portions of land in Nevada a status equivalent to counties. They'd be able to impose taxes, form school districts, courts of law, and provide other government services. So what lies ahead? As we look at the end-time prophetic events coming to pass in our age, it is becoming increasingly apparent that some of the most influential entities in both global policy and societal changes are not found in governments at all. Instead, multinational financial and technological oligarchs, the elite, are eager to conform the world to their own technocratic purposes. Could these figures be the 10 kings, the influencers, who give their authority and power to the beast, the Antichrist, and in return receive authority to rule as kings of the beast for 1 hour? Well, time will tell. But a compelling case can certainly be made that the technology these 10 figures control will help the Antichrist consolidate and enforce his tyrannical rule over the entire planet. The spirit of Antichrist, my friends, is now here, and the Antichrist is coming. Thankfully, greater is he who is in us and is coming again soon than he who is in the world. Let's go a little bit further under this New World Order. G20 announces plan for a worldwide digital ID and CBDCs. The world's leading economies, known as the G20, announced last week at a summit in India that they had agreed to build the necessary infrastructure to implement, listen, digital currencies and IDs worldwide. Many critics are concerned that governments and central banks will eventually regulate cryptocurrencies and then immediately replace them with central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, which lack privacy and security. Let me give you a prophecy tonight. What I'm saying right now, a lot of you are listening to. A lot of people aren't. Once they start coming for your $100 bills and tell you that they're going to give you $150 in CBDCs, and your $100 bill will not be able to be cashed within 6 months, everybody's going to go back and listen to what I've been saying. Because Americans don't hear it until it happens. CBDCs are coming. As sure as I'm sitting here, they are coming. Cash, fiat currency, is on its way out. We are headed to a cashless society. I say it week after week after week. And honestly, Americans have their eyes closed and their ears closed. They're not listening. It's coming. Many critics are concerned that governments and central banks will eventually regulate cryptocurrencies and then immediately replace them with central bank currencies, CBDCs, which lack privacy and security. And by the way, most Americans will jump for it. When they tell you your $100 bill is not going to be worth anything in 6 months, but we'll give you $150 right now in CBDCs. $150 of buying power as opposed to $100, everyone's going to do it. Listen, discussions were underway to build a global framework to regulate crypto assets. Jita Gopinath, the International Monetary Fund's Deputy Managing Director, said in a video posted on X that the G20, quote, helped shape a global perspective on how policymakers should deal with crypto assets. Some of the suggestions call for additional policing of cryptocurrencies. Critics say that these proposals could allow government authorities to impose a social credit score system and decide how their citizens can spend their money. And once the government has control of the economy and your finances, they can dictate anything they want. If designed properly, CBDCs could hold great promise, she said, to support a digital financial system that works for everyone. But critics say that is not true. What's going to happen is you're going to have monarchies, and you're going to have, like the Dutch, and they're going to be able to control it and control with their politics. So we realize that something's coming. I don't think we understand it fully, and we're not aware of it as a nation, but it is coming. Let me get, and again, just like the frog in boiling water, it'll happen slowly, and it's happening slowly, but eventually that frog dies as that water is turned up slowly by slowly. Here's one for you. Massive emergency alert test will sound alarms on U.S. cell phones, TVs, and radios in October. This is a test. This is only a test, but it's going to be a very big test. This next Wednesday, October 4th, at 2:20 p.m. Eastern Time, every single TV, every single radio, every single cell phone in the United States is going to blare out a distinctive, jarring electronic warning tone of an emergency alert, accompanied by a notice along these lines. This is a nationwide test of the emergency alert system, issued by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, covering the United States from 14:20 to 14:50 hours Eastern Time. This is only a test. No action is required. On Wednesday, October 4th, a test is planned of the entire nation's emergency alert system, a tryout to ensure everything is working correctly in the event of a big national disaster or attack. Now, this concerns me. Not the fact that your phone is going to get a blaring alert, so is mine and everybody else's. Why is the government doing this? Are they preparing us for a nuclear attack? Maybe that's what's happening. Maybe what they're doing is saying we hope they're all, because if there was a nuclear attack, your phone, which connects to almost every person in the United States and on the planet, will tell you where to go and what to do. So is this it? Is this what's going on? The test is scheduled to last approximately 1 minute. So all across the United States, TV shows will be interrupted, radio program halted, and phones will get a warning message. The message will go out in both in English and in Spanish. And let me just further on tell you what I'm concerned about. Over the years, there have been mistaken messages sent out that triggered false alarms at local levels. The most recent false alarm occurred in 2018 in Hawaii. You may have remembered it. I said it in the news. When the Hawaiian Emergency Management Agency system mistakenly sent an alert notification warning of a ballistic missile threat to the Hawaiian Islands. During a shift change, someone had selected the wrong item on a computer. The message read, "Ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill." It took 38 minutes to clarify that the alert was due to user error. But maybe what we're seeing right now is the government knows something that we don't know. Maybe they're on high alert to a nuclear exchange. Maybe they're trying to get everyone ready, and understand they would do that. But maybe that's why we're having this test. And that's why it's so comprehensive with every single phone, TV, and radio. So there's a lot of things happening that we're just not aware of. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying that there's a reason why this test is coming. Let's go a little bit further and tell you a little bit about Israel. Escalating tensions between Israel and Iran could trigger a wider war. We know that the Bible talks about at least 2 more wars coming before Armageddon. Psalm 83 war, 85 war, and the war of Ezekiel 38 and 39. On September 10th, in a remarkable speech to the worldwide summit on counterterrorism, Mossad Director David Barnea stated that Israel will target those who send terrorists to kill Israelis around the world. Barnea's message will certainly reach the highest echelons in Tehran, because someone very senior will have to make the decision regarding whether to ignore the threat and risk a situation in which terrorists are eliminated on Iranian soil in general and in Tehran specifically. Barnea said this, "I would like to take advantage of this podium to state that any harm done to any Israeli or Jew in any way whatsoever, and I mean in any way whatsoever, via proxy or Iranian alike, will elicit a response against the Iranians who dispatch the terrorists and the policymakers who authorize the terror units to carry out their plots, from the bottom all the way up to the top. I mean what I say. The price will be exacted from TRI, Terrorist Republic of Iran, deep inside Iran." What's he saying? He's saying from now on, if Tehran continues, and they've been doing it, with their strikes, we are going to bomb the executives and the high up government officials in Tehran. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu used similar language, stating, quote, "I heard the threats from an official of the Iranian regime today. I suggested he not threaten us. He and this regime need to know that we will respond forcefully to any attack on our people and our citizens." So for Israel to issue such messages publicly and with such bluntness was nothing short of extraordinary. It seems that Israel has had enough, and that after tens of foiled attacks, it's clear on the Israeli side that one day the Iranians could succeed, and that it's better to try and stop them this way, through verbal deterrence, than to be dragged into combat on the streets of Tehran. Barnea also likely knows with a high degree of certainty that Mossad can make good on its threats. He says if Iran does not stop its massive terror attack, Israel will have no choice but to respond enforceably. Barnea said that, quote, Iran has persisted unceasingly in pursuing terror using proxy teams tasked with attacking Israelis and Jews and hunting down Iranian dissidents living abroad, media people, and anyone perceived by the Iranian regime as a threat. He added, this past year alone, listen to it, we've worked together with our partners in the Israeli intelligence community and worldwide to disrupt 27 teams that have tried to mount attacks in Europe, Asia, Southeast Asia, and South America. The plots being pursued by these teams were orchestrated, masterminded, and directed by Iran. Each plot disrupted involved terrorists, weapons, and a target. He also warned that we are witnessing a significant increase in attempts to attack Jews and Israelis worldwide. And as we speak, we continue to track Iranian and proxy teams to prevent them from killing Jews and Israelis. In recent months, friction between Iran and Israel has been expanding. Several factors are driving this escalation, including Iran's advancements in its nuclear program and a growing Iranian push to encircle Israel through terrorist activities. Additionally, the construction of an airport in South Lebanon has sounded alarm bells in Israel. 12 miles from the Israeli border, meetings between Israeli intelligence minister and Iranian opposition figures, coupled with Prime Minister Netanyahu's recent encounter with Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the son of Iranian's former Shah, have only exacerbated these concerns. So what we're seeing a buildup. Israel's going to strike Iran. Iran has taken 27 different teams trying to strike Israelis all over the world, and Israel's done with it. They're going to go right for the heart of it. And listen, the Bible talks about Damascus being destroyed in 1 hour. That was never possible when that prophecy was mentioned. It is today. Let's go a little bit further and tell you a little bit about our economy. This was almost half of all young adults in the United States are living with their parents. When are we going to wake up and admit that our system is failing? Bidenomics doesn't work because Biden doesn't work. 50% of our young adults find themselves needing to live with their parents. I get that some are just lazy, but listen to the other reasons. Given the opportunity, they would love to have their own homes. Unfortunately, home prices have risen to absolutely absurd levels, and housing in America is now more unaffordable than it's ever been before. So we encourage them to pile up, young people, we encourage them to pile up giant mountains of student loan debt without ever considering the consequences. And then once they get into the real world, they quickly discover that the cost of living has become extremely suffocating. As a result, vast numbers of young adults are finding it necessary to move back with their parents. The last time that such a high percentage of young adults were living with their parents was during the aftermath of the Great Depression in the 1920s. These days, about 23 million, or 45% of all Americans 18 to 29 are living with their family. So why is it happening? Well, again, high interest rates have pushed housing costs to insane levels. This week, the average rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage reached 7.19%. It used to be 2.1%. So it's possible, economists are telling us, that mortgage rates may go up to 8% within the next couple of months. 8%. Are you kidding me? Even now, mortgage payments have escalated to absolutely crazy heights. Earlier this week, the following example was posted on Twitter by an Amy Nixon. She said, this home sold in 2021 for $685,000. The buyer's monthly payment was $3,526. Buyer's monthly payment today on the same home, $8,402. But wages went up, didn't they? But people have cash now, don't they? That's complete insanity. They do not. We have to stop pretending that everything's okay. Millions of potential sellers are being sidelined as well, because most of them would need to purchase another home if the current home they are living in was sold. So the vast majority of us are trapped in our homes right now. If you want to thank someone, thank President Biden and thank the Federal Reserve, because they created this mess. At this point, the national median asking rent in the United States is over $2,500 a month average. Unfortunately, I don't see much help for our young people on the horizon. The Federal Reserve does not plan to cut interest rates anytime soon. So we're watching something happen that's pretty shocking economically. Let me give you a little bit more as we go to moral decay. Those are empty library shelves. Woke weeding in Canadian school library creates empty shelves. This year I came into my school library and there were rows and rows of empty shelves with absolutely no books, 10th grader Rena Takata said in Uniondale School in Toronto. The Peel District School Board, which oversees Irondale, has recently ordered an equitable curation cycle in response to Ontario's Education Minister Stephen Lecce's directive to evaluate books, media, and all other sources for the purpose of utilizing resources that are inclusive and culturally responsive, relevant, and reflective of students and the board's broader school communities. Arundel staff has informed students in May, if their shelves look emptier right now, it's because we have to remove all books published prior to 2008. Now, why would they do that? The only reason why libraries take books away is a couple of reasons. Number one is because those books are tattered, or they're torn, or they're bent, or maybe they're not relative. But this one is actually, they're eliminated everything from Harry Potter to the Hunger Games, from The Very Hungry Caterpillar to The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. So basically what they're doing is they're trying to take things away from before 2008. It's for inclusiveness. Good libraries weed their collections continually, as I told you, to remove and replace damaged, moldy, or outdated books. Basically, they use the MUSTIE system, M-U-S-T-I-E, misleading. Information may be factually inaccurate or obsolete. Unpleasant refers to the physical condition of the book and requires replacement. Superseded, book has been overtaken by a new edition or a more current resource. Trivial, of no discernible literary or scientific merit, poorly written or presented. Irrelevant, doesn't meet the needs and interests of the library's community. And elsewhere, the book or the material in it may be better obtained from other sources. But what's unique about this is they have taken everything out since 2008. What they're doing is taking all history books out, they're taking anything that has any type of conservative value out, and they're replacing them with modern books, which mostly are woke. And so you tear down statues, you try to eliminate the things that are happening from our past. From the perspective of these extreme Marxists, the error committed in eradicating secondary school is not the act of eliminating older books, but rather the act of doing it so quickly that people notice the empty spaces on the shelves. The best revolution is one so subtle its victims don't even understand it's taking place. But this one was very, very quick. They're emptying their shelves in an attempt to comply with new, woke directives about equitable and inclusive content. Pretty scary. Let's go a little bit further. All over America, blue cities are facing a severe shortage of police officers. What? You mean Democratic cities are having a shortage of police officers? I thought they wanted to defund the police and get rid of them. Well, do you remember a few years ago when blue cities all over the nation wanted to defund the police? Well, how did that exactly work out? Well, wherever police budgets were cut, crime rates shot up. Duh. Today, we are in the midst of a massive crime wave that is sweeping our country. In fact, it's gotten so bad that even many of our most liberal politicians are desperate to restore law and order. But that won't be so easy, because after everything that has transpired, blue cities are discovering that they are having a really, really difficult time finding enough warm bodies to serve in their crime-ridden communities. You knew this was going to happen. Just look at what's happening in Minneapolis. Since the death of George Floyd, the number of officers serving in the MPD has fallen by about 45%. 45%. And now it's a crime-infested hellhole at this point. It has one of the lowest ratios of police officers to populations in the entire nation. Similar things can be said of San Francisco. The city on the Bay is an epicenter of our rapidly growing drug crisis. And they're having such a hard time finding police officers that they decided to recruit officers from Texas. You heard me, right? Things have gotten this bad. Blue cities are having such difficulty hiring police officers that they must try to recruit them from red states. This month, the SFPD will be making recruiting trips to 4 different Texas universities. Texas Southern University in Houston, Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, Prairie View A&M University, and Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. If you always dreamed of serving as a police officer in a lawless city with hordes of drug addicts, this is your chance. In Prince George County, just outside Washington, D.C., authorities have decided to search for hundreds of new recruits, are you ready for this? From Puerto Rico, because the shortage of police officers has become so severe. Other communities seem to have given up completely. In Seattle, citizens are being instructed to, quote, give up their car keys. I wouldn't live in Seattle if you paid me $1 million. And give criminals, quote, whatever they're looking for when they inevitably encounter violent thugs. Of course, these days, you can literally be robbed anywhere. On Sunday, a wealthy man in Connecticut was actually carjacked inside his own garage. A Connecticut man pulled his Aston Martin convertible into his garage Sunday and encountered two masked men who attacked him and stole the vehicle in a brazen, broad daylight carjacking captured on home security video. Yes, driving an expensive vehicle can be fun, but in our current social environment, it makes you a target. Criminals followed the man home. Sadly, this sort of crime is rapidly rising all over our nation. So from this point forward, make sure that nobody's following you when you're headed back to your house where you live. I wish that we did not have to constantly be on guard like this, but it's imperative to understand that our society has been fundamentally transformed. Lawlessness reigns in major cities all over the United States, and I fully expect violent crime to get even worse during the years ahead of us. I wish I could bring you some good news, but this is the land we live in. State of the nation: debt, addiction, and apostasy. In all of human history, there's never been a society more gluttonous than our own. Even decadent Rome wasn't as bad. We're addicted to sex, we're addicted to drugs, we're addicted to shopping, we're addicted to eating, we're addicted to entertainment, but most of all, we're addicted to money. Even though we were handed the keys to the greatest economic machine the world has ever seen, it was never enough for us. We always wanted to have more. So we've run up the largest single mountain of debt in the entire history of the planet. If you can believe it, on Monday, this past Monday, the size of the U.S. national debt crossed the $33 trillion mark for the very first time. I don't know if I even have the words to describe how reckless our leaders have become. It took from the founding of our nation all the way up to 1980 for the national debt to reach $1 trillion. $1 trillion. That's some 204 years. It took us 204 years to reach $1 trillion. But now we've added another $1 trillion in debt in just 89 days. And thanks to rising interest rates, interest payments, not our debt, interest payments on our debt are projected to increase at an exponential rate in the years ahead. The interest on our debt, just the interest, payments are expected to triple from nearly $475 billion in fiscal year 2022 to a stunning $1.4 trillion in 2032. By 2053, the interest payments on our debt are projected to surge to $5.4 trillion. To put that into perspective, that'll be more than the U.S. spends on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and all other mandatory and discretionary spending programs combined. We are literally destroying the future for our children and our grandchildren. As a nation, we are also addicted to drugs. Today, more Americans than ever are addicted to legal or illegal drugs, and more Americans than ever are dying from those addictions. Drug overdose deaths set a brand new record high last year. 110,000 people died as the fentanyl crisis continues to deepen. 8 states saw drug deaths continue to surge by 9% or more, the greatest increases of 21% coming in Washington State and Wyoming. Drug overdose deaths also set a brand new record high for the year before that and the year before that. So you're getting the picture? Our addiction to food is also killing many of us. The number of Americans that die from heart disease each year, with obesity as a factor, has tripled since 1999. Obesity now affects not 45% of all Americans. 25% are children. Of course, we are even more addicted to sex than we are to food. I'm about to share something with you that absolutely floored me when I first heard about it. Cathedral of Hope in Dallas, Cathedral of Hope, a church, Christian church, quote, recently celebrated a drag Sunday, during which the church publicly honored the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. You remember them, Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. This is the world's largest LGBTQ church, which is part of the United Church of Christ. If you're not familiar with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, they're a group of drag queens that relentlessly mocks the Christian faith. One of their members was just arrested last week for masturbation in a public park for more than an hour during daylight hours. This is who the church wants to honor. It was shocking to see the Sister of Perpetual Indulgence standing at the front of the church as the congregation of the Cathedral of Hope recited a pledge dedicated to drag queens. I wish I could tell you better news, but this is what our world is like. And we can't have our heads in the sand. There is something that has to happen. You can't mock God like this and not pay for it. Let me go a little bit further and tell you about this one. Civilian Climate Corps. Biden wants to recruit 20,000 people for Climate Justice Army. Yet another of his legendary list of verbal gaffes and blunders. Joe Biden has announced that the U.S. must work with China on, listen to what he said, quoting him, accelerating the climate crisis. This man doesn't even know what he's talking about. We want to work with China to accelerate the climate crisis? He then announced a new climate army, 20,000 soldiers strong, to be paid by the U.S. government to fight the battles of global warming. A report from the GB News said Biden's blunder was at the United Nations in a speech flooded with many of the mishaps he's become increasingly known for. Mentioned working with China on multiple efforts. Nowhere is that more critical than accelerating the climate crisis, he charged. The report said he then tried to correct his stumble with than accelerating climate crisis. Did the same thing. Then within hours, Fox News reported of his announcement about this new army. The report said an executive order was lined up for Biden, executive order, to sign that would hire 20,000 Americans to work on, quote, climate change. It's ridiculous. The issue was known for years as global warming until warming stopped. Now it's called climate change. And it's believed by activists to be the biggest crisis facing the world, even though a coalition of 1,600 scientists signed a statement that there is no emergency existing at all. According to the White House, mobilize a new diverse generation. More than 20,000 Americans will be trained to put to work on conservative, clean energy and environmental justice projects. The ultimate goal of the program is to pave the way for members of the Corps to find jobs in the public and private sector. The White House claimed the American Climate Corps is a new initiative that will work on a wide range of projects that tackle climate change, including restoring coastal wetlands to protect communities from storm surges and flooding, deploying clean energy, managing forests to improve health and prevent catastrophic wildfires. I got news for him. You can't prevent a wildfire. Lots of times it happens by negligence, and lots of times it happens by lightning strikes. Implementing energy efficient solutions to cut energy bills for hardworking families and more. Blah, 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 blah. Joe Biden already is well into his agenda for mandating green energy, electric cars. How's that working? On Americans, whether the need is there or not, and whether they want them or not. On his first day in office, and since then, he's attacked America's energy industry, promising there will be no place for fossil fuels in his administration. Now, I don't mean to be cocky, but to which I would say we already have a fossil for a president. Why can't we have fossil fuels? When California recently announced new vehicle efficiency standards, it took only days for it to announce that electric car owners should not be charging their cars because the grid was incapable of handling demand. How ridiculous is this? Today's historic action to put American Climate Corps into motion is a clear demonstration that the Biden administration knows that there are more ways they can leverage executive power to lead an all-out mobilization of our government and society to stop the climate crisis, he said. The plans for a Biden army originally were in his Build Back Better bill that's costing American taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars, but it was dropped by Congress. So Biden took executive action rather than to try to accomplish America's agenda through congressional action. His action followed demands from the climate activists and the Democratic lawmakers to do by fiat what Congress refused to give him. He's an autocrat. The Guardian reported Biden's army is expected to, quote, build trails, plant trees, help install solar panels, and more. Man, we need that. The White House refused to reveal the costs expected or where that money will come from. I got a hint for them. It's probably coming from your pocket and mine. But Democrats earlier suggested spending $10 billion on their claim. It's absolutely unbelievable. Mediterranean devastation, signs of things to come, my last article. In recent weeks, devastating events have occurred around the Mediterranean. Libya saw massive flooding as intense rains of more than 16 inches over 2 days caused dams to break. In coastal city of Derna, over 11,000 people reported dead and thousands more were missing. Aside from driving rains, officials are blaming the catastrophe on the government's neglect of dam maintenance. To the west in Morocco, a major earthquake registering 6.8 struck last week near an area very popular with tourists. The quake killed over 2,900 people, with thousands more still missing at the time of this writing. Meanwhile, some are calling the recent wildfires in Greece the largest ever recorded in the European Union. Go to SONUS on that one, by the way. The fires in Greece were followed by major flooding in Italy. These catastrophic events have turned the Mediterranean into a zone of tragedy. 2,000 years ago, Jesus told us that he foretold climatic events in human history that would eventually grow to dwarf all others that had come before. Students of the Bible prophecy should be both moved to compassion and consider Jesus' admonition. As assuredly these sobering disasters are changing life for tens of thousands in the Mediterranean, the disasters to come will forever change all of humanity and literally the face of the earth. Chad, would you give that to me? That's our In the News for now. I'm going to